Is it fixed?
It's fixed.
You sure?
I'm sure.
All right, show me.
How's it going? Welcome back to Our Gold Road. So in this video, we're going to be changing out the converter charger in our 1994 Airstream Land Yacht. We noticed that the lights were dimming, so we assumed that the charger was not charging the batteries like it was going to. So we're going to go ahead and change that out, and I'll show you how I tested it and figured it all out. All right, this is where you tell them. What do you want to tell them?
Okay, so I'll tell them about the problems we were having.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if you're here, you're probably wondering maybe why your lights are dimming in your trailer or RV, because I sure as heck was.
And I was.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because we were working on the Airstream and the lights were on, but they were getting dimmer.
Dimmer and dimmer.
Dimmer. And we were plugged into shore power. It's like, wait a second, we have power. The air conditioner would come on. Then we figured it out.
Yeah, for me, I thought it was a wiring issue. I thought it was going to be a serious electrical issue. Luckily, it was not.
It's not. So this is how trailers work. So these lights, they are DC powered, right? Like, they work now.
That one doesn't. Here.
Yes. That switch has to be on. Okay, so your lights inside, a lot of them, they're going to be DC powered, which means that they run off your battery. And that makes sense because if you're, let's say, overnighting at a Cracker Barrel or you pull in, they need to be able to run off the battery because you're not going to be able to plug your trailer in all the time to run your lights. So what happens is the lights are pulling power from your battery, and when you plug in to shore power or AC power, that then charges your batteries. So it's not the plug on the outside of your trailer that is powering these lights.
Yeah, I thought because the trailer was plugged in, you would have lights, kind of like you have a lamp. But that is not how it works. No, the batteries run your lights. The plug takes the converter that charges the battery that keeps your lights running.
Now the shore power, it will, you know, that's your air conditioner, that's the larger, that's your outlets and things like that, unless you have a DC outlet. That's what you have to be plugged in to run your bigger appliances that you have in your trailer.
Of course, but the lights, if you're here because your lights are dimming and you don't know why, that is why. Because if you're like me, you thought plugging in was the solution. It is not the solution.
So it's either your battery, which we actually did have a bad battery.
We did have a bad battery, so we tested the batteries after they drained and then recharged them and figured out one was a bad battery. But then when we put the new batteries in,
they still dimmed.
The problem was not fixed.
So then he tested the converter.
Yes, then I looked into the converter and how the converter worked, and the converter was the problem. And we're going to show you how to replace one.
No more dim lights. Just so we're clear, your lights are running off of DC power, which is battery power, and your larger electronics like your air conditioner are going to need shore power or AC power because it's more power to run those types of electronics. So with your lights, since it pulls battery power, they need to stay charged. The batteries have to work. And to charge those batteries, you need a converter. Now what the converter does is it takes that shore power, and it's the AC power goes into the converter, and it converts that power to DC charge, which it then can charge those DC batteries to power these lights.
Full disclosure, I am not an electrician. I just watch videos to learn how to do this converter thing. So it's basically just a converter swap out is all I'm doing. So I am not an electrician. So if you don't know what you're doing with electricity, please go to an RV shop and let them handle it. But all we're doing here is just a simple converter swap out. Let's go check it out. All right, so one of the things you want to make sure you do when you're working with electricity is disconnect all power. So I disconnected the shore power, and now I'm going to disconnect the batteries. I don't have to unplug them because I have a lever that disconnects any power from the battery, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So this converter is actually in front of the passenger seat on this Airstream, so we just have to pull off this little panel right here to see it. I had to close that curtain. That light was just blinding me as where the sun is coming in. But the converter is down there. As you can see, You have the outlet where it's plugged right here, and then you have the two connections down here. Then the ground. Now, just have to figure out how to pull this out. But before we pull it out, I'm just going to tell you how we figured out our converter is wrong. One, the lights were dimming, so we knew there had to be a problem with the batteries being charged. So to test that, we did a couple different things. I took the leads to the battery to test and see if the battery was charging when the unit was plugged in, and the batteries were not charging when the unit was plugged in. So then I brought it into the converter itself, checked the converter. The converter was also not showing the right DC voltage reading. It's supposed to be like 13.5 or above, somewhere around that, to show that it's charging. Ours was just at 12. So our batteries are fine because we haven't really been using them, but it's not charging the batteries. So another thing we checked was we checked the plug. So we checked the plug to see if there was actually power coming from the plug to the converter so it can convert the power like it's supposed to. And that was working. The plug is working. So we know it's not the plug, so we know it is the converter. And our converter does not have a fuse, at least not one that I can see because it's tucked way up in there. So we can't check if it's a fuse. So we are assuming that it's a bad converter, so we have to pull the converter out and just swap it out. Alright, now that we have the converter off of the RV wall, we're going to disconnect the wires, and we're going to put little caps on it because we're going to treat them like they're all hot, even though I have the battery disconnected and we're not plugged in. So just 4 easy steps. First, you're going to unplug the converter. Then you're going to disconnect the ground wire. Then we're going to disconnect the negative wire. And then we're going to disconnect the positive wire. All right, that's it. That's our old converter. Now we're going to go put in the new one. So now we're going to be installing this new Powermax converter. How fancy that is. All right, let me go check something real quick. Just going to test real quick to see if it fits into the old spot or if I need to get a new screw to attach it to the wall.
Nope.
It is not going to drill to the wall as easy as I hoped it would, so, but not a big deal.
Nope. Nope.
So now we're just going to reinstall in reverse. We're going to connect the positive wire, connect the negative wire, and after we get it mounted, we're going to connect the ground wire and then plug the converter in. All right, now that we have the new converter installed, we're going to plug into shore power, and I'm going to reconnect the batteries, and we're going to go ahead and test them to make sure that the converter is working. So what we're going to want to do, we're going to be testing DC power. This is my Harbor Freight multimeter. So we're going to have these two connections down here on the bottom, this on the comm and this on the voltage section. You see that right there? So we'll turn it to DC power, DC, and we'll do 20 because we're just trying to see if there's 13 volts to see if it's charging. So 20 is going to be enough, and we'll go ahead and test it. All right, so now we're going to take the leads, go to the negative, and go to the positive, and see what our reading is. And our reading is 13.7, which means that it is charging. Go ahead, we're going to drop the multimeter. We'll go ahead and check the other battery. 13.5, so they are charging. So that's it, swapping out the converter. It's not a lot of work. It's basically just a couple wires and a plug and the ground wire you have to do. I think the hardest part for me, and sometimes it might be easier on different coaches, but on this one, the hardest part would be mounting it to the wall, because I was drilling into that frame and that frame is thick, which I guess means it's well built, so that's good. But we're all done, it's all working. Thank God, because I hated my lights dimming and not knowing if my trailer was charging while I was plugged in. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel for more tricks and tips on how to renovate your vintage RVs. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.